Hello again, everyone. Ken from Whittling Woods back again with another whittling tutorial. Today we're going to do a basic Woodspirit for beginners. You can see what we're going to wind up with at the end of this little tutorial here. It's geared pretty much towards people just beginning whittling and want to try their hand at wood spirits, and that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to keep it pretty basic using just a pocket knife and a piece of walnut. So get your stuff ready and let's get started. I give you some dimensions here. The piece I'm using is about 6 inches long, give or take. You know, these measurements aren't critical. It's about looks like maybe 1 3/8 in diameter there. And we're going to be using this buck knife, model 371. I have had this knife for probably 15 years, and I've never used it. I happened to find it in the bottom of a toolbox, sharpened it up, and gave it a shot. It's an okay knife. You know, it's not the greatest knife, I think. I think the Rough Riders that I have, I kind of like better. This is a little bit bigger, which I do like. But there's a shorter blade. I actually cut that down a bit. I think it used to be closer to 1 3/4. So I cut it down, and then I grind down the bevel quite a bit and sharpen it up. The bevel's a little too steep, so I kind of shallow it out a bit. But use any kind of knife you have. You can use a regular whittling knife, even a Stanley 199. Just looking at the piece, I tend to always look at it and see where the curve is. Since the nose is going to be the most prominent feature, I kind of want to allow the wood, if there's some curve in it, to put the nose in at that point. So here we go. We're going to just remove a little bark first. That's pretty much an easy part. I come down here, you can see about 1.5 inches. And then I just start removing a portion of the bark. You can always refer to the obviously the little image I have up there on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm using the larger knife here. It's probably a little bit too big for this, but I had it. And like I said, you don't have to go out and get yourself a buck knife. Use whatever you have to do this whittle. So there you go. We removed a good section of the bark over there. We're going to allow ourselves some wood to whittle into a little wood spirit. I came up from the bottom. It's about 2 inches, but that changes over time. So there you go. You can kind of see the overall measurements. Again, these are not critical measurements. Use whatever dimensions you like. I'm just kind of showing you how I go about it, so you have something to go by. And the first cut you always make is for the top of the nose, the brow line, the eye line, and that's what we're doing here. Just basically we're taking out a sort of a V chunk of wood, and it's approximately maybe 2 inches from the top of the piece, but again, not critical. I would use maybe that more so. It's close to 7/8 an inch down. Again, not critical. Don't worry about it. So I'm just trying to essentially get to the area that the bottom of the wedge will be sort of where the bottom of the eyes are, and then that piece I'm whittling right now is where the eyes are going to be, and then on the sides over there, here is the bridge of the nose, and this will all be the eye and the brow area up on the top over there. So there you go. You can kind of see they're not very deep cuts to begin with here. Then we're going to come down. The next cut we make, typically, stop cut, is for the bottom of the nose. And you can really put this at any place you want, depending on what kind of nose you want to give him. So it's just a straight in cut and then cut up to it, basic stop cut. So you can see the dimensions I used right there. It's about 1 inch down from the eye, maybe 1 inch and 3/4 down for the bottom of the nose in this particular whittle here. But again, the measurements aren't particularly critical. We sort of change them a little bit as we go anyway. Now I'm just removing a little bit of wood on either side of the nose. This will be that'll be the cheek area, and the kind of the bag under the eye. So I'm just removing a little bit of wood. It makes it a little bit easier when we take off chunks of wood on either side of the nose. If you remove as much as you possibly can initially, but there you go. I try to keep it depends. You can the line there for the eyes, that little arch you can see that I'm whittling in now, that I started before. It could be slanting up, slanting down, however you want to do it, depending on what type of expression you want to give the wood spirit. Here we're just whittling away some of where the forehead will be, so I'm cutting back that wood just a bit. Your forehead naturally slopes back from your brow area, so we're just going to whittle that back just a bit. There you go. You can kind of see. Initially, I kind of, the slope of the forehead and the slope of the nose, I sort of keep them somewhat similar. Now we're going to switch to the smaller blade. The big blade's just a little too bulky for this kind of whittling. It's good for some bulk removal, but I don't use the medium-sized blade. I found it to be a little finicky in this particular buck knife. It's a little wobbly. The bigger blade and the small blade come from one end, and they're a little sturdier. The other blade I found, the medium-sized blade, to be a little bit too wobbly for my taste. And it could be just this particular buck knife, the quality of manufacturing, or these are all, even back then, 15 years ago, they were all foreign made. I do like using pocket knives. They have their definite advantages. I especially use them in found wood like this. If I was doing this in maybe a piece of basswood, I'd probably just pull out a regular whittling knife. Like I said, you really could get away with a lot of knives. So typically for found wood, I like the bevel on my blade to be not quite as shallow as you would typically find for a basswood whittle. It just makes it a little sturdier. The wood's a little harder. And the other thing to keep in mind too, as I'm getting ready here, just to again take back some of that cheek area, is that this is found wood, so it is walnut. It's a little harder, obviously, than basswood, but I do keep my wood temporarily stored in some water after I cut it. This one was probably stored, I'd say, maybe for about a few months. So it's still carvable. It's a little stringy when it's wet like this. If you notice moisture coming out of it, it's because literally it's sitting in a bucket of water for 3 months. It does keep it from drying out. It makes it just a little bit more carvable. Here we're starting the eye. So I'm just going to make a stop cut straight in, maybe slightly angled towards the cheek, up to that eye line. And then we're going to come in and deepen that cut over there, a little triangle. You can see we'll take that right there. So there you go. And then we'll come back and we'll remove the rest of the wood. And this area here that we're whittling will eventually be the little cheek and the bag under the eye. You can see the wood's a bit, when you wood like this, again, it's not basswood. It's a bit stringy because it's kind of wet, and so you wind up having to clean it up a little bit more. But so keep that in mind if you're using found wood. Don't try to get the cuts perfect initially, because you're gonna have to go back and do a little cleaning up and as you get further in the whittle. There you can see. So we removed that little chunk of wood, revealing some wood there in the middle. That'll eventually be the nose. Kind of taper it in just a bit on the top over there, and kind of start beginning to round it over. And we'll just do the other side here. Same basic principle. Stop cut in, and you can see this wood's it's pretty hard. I'm having a bit of trouble getting the knife into it there, but take your time and you'll get it. And then we're going to do the same thing. We'll take that little triangle of wood. We're doing a pairing cut here to get to that. It makes it a little easier and safer. If I'm doing this as a right-handed person, but if you're left-handed, it'll be the opposite on your whittle. So again, just removing that wood to reveal that prominent chunk of wood in the center there that will be the nose. And again, since the wood's wet, it doesn't snap out like you would typically find in a cured piece of basswood. So just keep that in mind if you're whittling something like this. And there you go. We got the point here is just to whittle away wood on all sides, the left and right and the bottom, to reveal that chunk of wood in the middle there that will eventually turn into the nose. Now we're going to deepen the nose a bit when we put the smile line in, so it'll look like it's not just sitting right on top of the face, but it's going to step back a little bit, and you'll see we get to that in a little bit. But there you go. So get yourself to that point, and you'll be good to go. Here I'm just flaring up the nostrils. Initially, I sort of get what type of angle I want, and again, this is creative license here. You do whatever you want, however you want to flare them up. I kind of like them a little flared up on the wood spirits, and I typically like to get those cuts in before I form the nostril. It just makes it easier. And so kind of there you go, a little close-up picture there. Now we're going to start forming the nostrils. So I come in here straight in with a stop cut. I come up about a third of the way from the bottom, and I just angle it slightly towards the tip. A little stop cut, and I remove wood on either side of it, up and down. You can see a little wedge of wood comes out there. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Let's try to get them lined up if you can. Sometimes it helps to draw them in. So, it doesn't necessarily work as well with wet wood, but that way you're sure to get them aligned pretty evenly. And I do the same thing. So there you go. We got the basics. You can see it sort of forms a bit of the nose. I tend to remove a little bit of wood on top of that nostril line, just to thin it out a bit, make the nostrils slightly more prominent than the bridge part of the nose. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm just kind of removing the wood. This is your opportunity to get things somewhat symmetrical. But again, don't worry if they're not all that symmetrical, because a lot of noses aren't. Here I'm just kind of blending those cuts I made in to sort of hollow out that nostril area. You can kind of see on that side a little bit. So I just kind of come in there and I do a little bit of a scooping cut right at the tip of the nose there, where the nostril line is. It just kind of blends them all in. And here we'll start the smile line. This will help us form the cheek, and it'll also recess the nose a bit. So we're just going to come in there at a slight angle, make another cut along the nostril, and then take out that little chunk of wood. There you go. I round it over a little bit more. I'll come down here and then I'll start curving it up to kind of blend it into the side. So there you go. You can see we're going to eventually form sort of a round, little puffy cheek. And again, keep in mind, and I've mentioned this in a number of videos, I sort of work roughing out, and then I go back and I start adding detail in. Here we're putting the smile line on the other side. Same principle. Put an angle cut from the nostril line down away from the nose, and come up and remove that chunk of wood. The first, also put a stop cut in along the nostril there. And so there you go. And the same thing, we're just going to kind of round it out over there. And don't worry if they're not perfectly even at this point. You can go back and there is you have some room for alteration. Just get yourself kind of do a rough out. I'm just cleaning out that little area right where the cheek and the nostril come together. Depending on the wood you're using, it might pop out really clean, but in found wood like this, it's still relatively wet. It's going to be a little. You're going to have to go back a couple times. The other thing I would recommend is washing it off periodically, just to get some of the pieces of wood that are sticking to it out of your way. There you go. We sort of got the cheeks roughed in, the nose roughed in, or actually the nose is a little bit more than roughed in, but we'll add a little bit more character to it as we go along. And here I'm just beginning to round out the beard and mustache area. So I'm just going to kind of come in and well, actually, I'm just correcting the cheeks a little bit, just rounding them off a little bit. I was looking at it, and I said they need to be, they're a little too pointy, so I wanted to kind of round them out and add a little bit more of character in that regard to it. I try to round over the edges a bit, just to make it blend nicely. There you go. Okay, a little bit kind of roughed out there. And here we're going to start the eye. So what I like to do is I kind of come in here, we'll zoom in there a bit, and you can see I do a little bit of a triangular piece. I take that out, I start with that. I want to get that area where the brow, where the nose and the brow line come together, kind of in the top of the cheek over there, to be sort of the deepest. That is kind of the deepest spot on your face. So all I'm doing in there is, making taking a little chip cut out, a little triangular cut, coming along the nose, along the eye line there, and along the cheek, and I just remove a little bit of a triangular piece of wood. There you go, sort of deepens it a bit. And now these are very simple eyes, they're not overly detailed. I just put a stop cut in, angled up away from the nose, as you can see, and then I just cut down to that. And then it's a little triangular, and then I come along the other side and I do the same thing. I put a little stop cut in, and I just cut that wood back a little bit. We're revealing this little triangular piece of wood that we will basically turn into the eyeball and the eyelid. Kind of, they form together. And I kind of go back in, and I clean it up and I round it over just a bit. I nip off the top of the triangle there just to round it over a bit, and you can kind of see. That's all it is. They're real, relatively simple to do. They're not overly complex, and I think they're effective. So there you go. We got a basic rough out of the eye over there. I'm just cleaning up those little cuts. You're gonna have to go back in and just like I said, aim towards revealing a little triangular piece of wood. That's really all you're doing here. And then you're going to flip it around and sort of start to clean it up. This will be the area we're cleaning up now. Will eventually we'll turn that into the eyebrow. You can kind of see it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple to do. It's basically you're making two cuts, forming a triangle, and then just removing the wood down to that triangle. So think of it in those terms. Don't get ahead of yourself and look at a detailed picture of the eye and figure out how you're going to carve it. Just figure, okay, how am I going to get a little piece of a triangular shaped piece of wood, and work towards that. You see, simplify it for yourself. So again, we're literally doing the same thing. Just a couple stop cuts and then cut down to it to reveal that little, like I said, that little triangular shape of wood. And then we nip off the apex of that triangle to sort of round it over a bit. I know it might be an odd angle to view this at, but that's how you're going to be looking at it. So it's good to see it in that way. There you go. Kind of give you an idea of what they kind of look like. And then I'm just starting to remove some of that wood. That center part right above the nose, we're going to remove most of that wood in there. And then on either side above the eye, we're going to leave a chunk of wood to form the eyebrows. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just scooping out a little bit of wood here, flaring it back to deepen the forehead just a bit more. And we're going to come in here and split the difference there. So straight in on either right on top of the nose, and then another little wedge cut. So we're just go straight in and then cut down to that. And there you go. We took out a little chunk of wood, and we start just rounding it over. So we follow the shape of the eye itself. Put little stop cuts in and cut down to it. And this will be eventually be the eyebrow. These are fun whittles to do. They're enjoyable. I really enjoy doing wood spirits. Probably one of my favorite things to whittle, to be honest with you. There you go. And you can certainly put lots of detail into these, but we're doing a very basic one here because if you're getting started, I think you just need to understand a very basic piece before you start adding a lot more detail. But honestly, they're pretty effective in just looking at it from a very basic perspective as well. They're fairly easy to do. And again, when I say easy, I don't mean to. I get if you're just starting out whittling. I've been whittling for a long time, and I don't want to make it sound like you should find this absolutely simple to do. It takes some time. You're going to mess up a few of them as you do it, but that's okay. Get into the enjoyment of just getting a piece of wood, sitting outside. Using your pocket knife or your whittling knife and trying your hand at whittling something in a found piece of wood. It's a very fun, relaxing hobby. And then when you're done with it, actually this one, I never typically paint them, but this one I actually add a little color to at the end. But you'll I think you might have seen that in the beginning and right at the end of the video. Here we're forming the mustache. So again, straight in the wood, sort of like what we did with the eyebrows. And then I'm just going to remove a little triangular piece of wood on either side. So there you go. Come in, put another stop cut in. And we start the bottom of the mustache, the little bit of the mouth area. But again, I think it helps if you don't get ahead of yourself and start thinking in terms of anatomical features. Just think in terms of shapes. It's much easier to think of it. I got to whittle a little triangular piece over here. I gotta put a wedge shape over here, and then you build it up, and you eventually turn those into features. So here we're just going to continue that line right down to the bark line. I like to blend the wood spirits I whittle into the bark, just the way I like to do things. You can remove a lot more bark if you choose to. You'll see towards the end there, you can see the pictures up on the left here. I blend the beard lines into those crevices that are already in the bark. Now we're going to start the top of the mustache. So we're going to come down, form a little, take out a little wedge of wood between where the mustache and the cheek is. That area right there is essentially the part of the beard that comes down underneath your cheeks and tucks into the mustache. That's all we're doing. And like I said, we're just going to continue the mustache line down and then eventually into the bark. And again, this is just the same idea here. We're just removing a little bit of wood on the for the top end of the mustache. Again, it's it's sort of a triangular shape between the cheek and the top of the mustache. A little wedge of wood that you're removing, essentially. Kind of give you a look there. I was just doing a little cleanup for that part where that eventually be the lower lip and the top of the beard. And here we're going to form the lower lip. Again, this is just a triangle. I come in at an angle down to the center, center line, imaginary center line. And we're going to form another little triangle. A lot of whittling I find is just forming an initial triangle, at least the way I do it. I like to look at it this way. It's simple. To make a triangle and then shape that. You can see it looks initially kind of funny when you do it, but in the end, it gets an effective lower lip, I think. You can kind of see we got a little triangle sticking out from below the mustache over there, and then we're just going to start nipping the apex back. Kind of like what we did with the eye. Made a triangle, then nipped the apex back and rounded off a bit. It's a very similar cuts. Once you get those down, you're good to go. You can do this pretty simply. There you go. We got a chunk of wood. Now we're going to go right on the top of that triangle, right underneath the mustache, and scoop out a little piece of wood, right where the mustache kind of comes together. Right now it's angled up. We'll eventually going to go back in there and scoop out a little piece to make it look like the lip recessing into the mouth. But you'll see that in a minute here. So there you go. I'm going to stick my knife pretty much straight into the wood. You can see the angle there. And I'm just going to kind of scoop out a little bit of wood. I kind of round it up a bit, just a little bit of a scooping cut. And that basically forms the lower lip and a bit of the mouth area. And that's really all you need. There you go. Kind of like that. Again, don't get too concerned if it doesn't look perfect or clean initially. You're going to have to go back and clean things up, especially when you're using found wood like this. It's going to be a little stringy, and you're going to have to, play with that wood a bit. But just rough it out and then go back and do it. Here, I'm just rounding over the that mustache area. You can go back in and add strands of hair to the mustache if you so choose, but we're keeping this very simple and just leaving the wood, this sort of one big chunk of wood, and then just adding a little texturing cuts. Here we're just tapering it into the bark. I like that look personally. Maybe some people would not particularly like that. I kind of like it, and it really depends on the wood you're using, what kind of bark you have. This walnut has very pronounced bark, and it holds on pretty well. Sometimes you wind up losing a section, but you can always work with it. And I just like the look of having it taper into the wood. It looks more natural, you know, like it's growing out of it. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side too. Taper that mustache down and into the bark area. And if you don't have walnut, use whatever you have. I've done them in maple, sweet gum, oak. You can use whatever you have, and give it a shot at least. Here we're just revealing a little bit more of that wood. Bring it down a little bit further because I want to put some little strands for the beard. You can sort of leave it like that if you choose as well, but we'll put a few strands in there. So I'm just going to kind of make these slicing cuts into the wood down to the bark line, and then come back and remove wood on either side of it. It's a little tricky with wood like this. Walnut wet like this can be a bit stringy, and sometimes give you a little bit of a little bit of pushback when you're whittling it. But take your time, and I'll kind of show you basically how I initially go about it. I kind of just, like I said, put this little slicing cut in, and then I go back in on either side, and I, with the knife slightly angled, and remove as if you had a V-gouge. You would remove a little wedge of wood under there, and hopefully it comes out a little bit better than this is coming out. But you might have to make a few passes in there to clean it up a bit. Here I'm looking at the bark itself, and I'm looking at those lines formed naturally in the bark, and I'm trying to make the mustache lines, or excuse me, the beard lines, go right into those little crevices in the bark. It's again, it just use some artistic license when you're doing these. And then same thing. I'm just going to make a few more cuts on this side here, and so again, I just kind of slice into the wood, and I go back, and I start nipping away wood on either side of that cut until I get to a depth and shape that I like. Then I go back in, and I round them off, kind of like what we did with the mustache. I'll eventually round them off. I'm just kind of roughing in the lines at this point over here. Yeah, they look pretty sloppy right now, but we go back in, and I kind of clean those up. It took a few passes to get this cleaned up, but eventually I do. I'm not going to bore you with all those details, but because all it is just going back in and cleaning up the little shaggy pieces of wood, and kind of give you the basic rough out. And the important thing, don't forget to stop periodically and strop your knife. And again, some people have asked me, how often do you strop? Well, I strop when I need to. And just a piece of leather on a piece of wood, and some honing compound, and I strop it periodically as I'm whittling. I just want to throw that in there. Here I'm just beginning to get a little texture. I'm rounding over those cuts. You can see I kind of cleaned them up a bit. And this is the part of the whittle here where we're going back in, and we're essentially pretty close to being done here. We're just going to kind of come back in, add a bit of texturing cuts to add facets to the wood. I was thinking as I was doing this, I was going to try some dry brushing on it. It didn't work out as well as I had hoped. I think the wood was a little bit too wet, and I was hoping to highlight some of the facets a little bit more. It kind of worked, but the wood was a little bit too wet for that, and I think I could have waited a little bit more. But in the end, actually, I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. And you don't have to. I typically never paint these, but I gave it a shot where I added a little bit of white to the beard and mustache area and the eyebrow area, and I added just a bit of reddish color to the lips and the nose. It doesn't show up all that well in the image of it that you saw in the beginning and you'll see at the end, but and the wood will darken over time. That's the thing with using wood that's still wet or green, not completely cured. The walnut darkens quite a bit over time. So, anything you do to it is going to change. If you do paint it right after whittling, it is going to change a little bit. But, you play around, try different things. Like I said, I typically don't paint them. What I do is I typically will finish them after I'm done with some Howard feed and wax. It's a mix of beeswax and orange oil, and it really works great. I find that the kind of my go-to finishing on all my whittles, whether it's found wood or basswood or whatever. It's called Howard Feed and Wax. Check it out. I've been very happy with it. It's not a permanent finish, so it's not like a polyurethane or something like that. It won't allow a permanent protection to the wood, so you may have to periodically refinish it, but I'm okay with that. I like the look. It softens the wood a bit. It's an oil, so it works really well with wood, and it actually even helps if you have a little rough cuts in there. It'll actually help smooth them out a bit. So check it out if you have an opportunity. Buy a bottle. It's not that expensive, and give it a shot on your whittles. See what you think. Let me know if you used it. I'm curious what other people think of it. I'm real happy with it. I'm not sponsored by them, but I just find the product very, very good to use. Here I'm just putting a little bit of a bagginess under the eye. The cuts I was making before when I was talking about Howard Feed Wax were just little lines in the forehead there. That's all. Just to add a little wrinkles in the forehead. Like I said, this is the detail phase. Then you're going to go back, add a little bit of details like the bags under the eyes here, little wrinkles on the forehead. Maybe clean up the nose and shape it the way you like. That's all I'm doing. Just angling down, little, stop cut in, and then kind of cutting the wood up to that stop cut. Making, just like I said, like a little bag under the eye. I try not to make these too deep. I just want to give the illusion that there's a bagginess under the eye there. He's an old guy, an old Woodspirit. And kind of clean up the bottom of the nose. Sometimes if you're doing the mustache, you might chip away a little bit of wood. So I kind of wait to put the final touches once I'm done with everything. Here I'm just doing those little scooping, blending cuts for the nostrils, just to have it blend into the nose a little bit better. Adding just final details to the nose to get the shape I want. And there you go. Here it is, all washed up, ready for painting if you choose, or just adding a final finish. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. It was a real fun whittle to do. I encourage you to give it a shot. Let me know in the comments what you think. And I hope you all have a great whittling week. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.